Buckeye Talk after Ohio State's 6th practice of the spring. Nathan Baird from cleveland.com along with Steve Means, Doug Lesmerises. And I remembered saying on one of the pods recently that it wouldn't surprise me if we get through the spring and Cade Stover takes a look at the depth chart and how much he could do at tight end and decides that maybe the linebacker experiment is over. And you guys, I wasn't here this morning, but you guys got to practice today, and the linebacker experiment seems like it might be over. He was back at tight end. Steven, just what did you see at practice today from the way he was being used and how he's kind of fitting back into that spot?
He's being used as the starting tight end on the inline, blocking tight end. We got a text late last night from one of our trusty texters that said, Cade Stover back at tight end, some reporting please, with a smiley face. And so when I walked in this morning, that was the first thing I looked for, is what color is number 8's jersey. And if there's 2 number 8s in white, that means he's still a linebacker, because the other one is JJB. If there's one in scarlet, well then he's back at tight end, and that little experiment is over. He was back at tight end, he was right at the front of the line in all the groups. It looked like he had still been in the tight end room, even if he wasn't necessarily doing it at practice, just so he was up to date, just in case he did want to make that switch back to tight end. But yeah, he was running first in all the tight end drills, and then as we were getting a sneak peek at what maybe the starting 22 looked like as we were walking out, he and Joe Royer were the first 2 tight ends to take the field for what was a 12 personnel drill. So it's cool that he got a chance to play linebacker for 2 games, but Cade Stover is their starting tight end.
I mean, Kevin Wilson was also in today for interviews, the offensive coordinator and the tight ends coach, and he's been very complimentary of the progress that players like Joe Royer and G. Scott have been making, but I think it's also been pretty clear that they aren't at a level yet where they feel like they can be their number 1 tight end. And the way he talks about this offense, the way Ryan Day talks about this offense, they feel like they have to have a blocking tight end in there at all times. And Kevin Wilson went into a long description today of why you have to have that in order to be able to still run the ball. So all those things considered, this is not a surprise at this point, right, Doug?
No, I think Cade Stover has about 20 pounds on G. Scott and Joe Royer, which seems to be a big factor in this because, again, they're looking for blocking first from these guys. And Kevin Wilson, I think he was back today. Today was the day. This is practice 6 for them. I think he practiced 6. He was back at tight end. And Kevin Wilson said, it's not up to me, but, I'd like to have him back. I think they let the process play out. And Kevin Wilson said, if you do something for the team, which is so interesting because how often do we hear coaches say, hey, you got to do this for the team? Kevin Wilson was like, if you do something for the team, it's not going to work. You've got to do it for yourself. And my guess would be Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson had an idea this might happen. And in the meantime, there were some nervous tight end press conferences, but they let Cade Stover sort of work through it and come to his own conclusion rather than saying, dude, we need you at tight end. They let him figure it out, and I think they believe that'll get more buy-in. Now they're going to talk up Cade Stover. He's been a great leader, they said. I'm not saying that's not true, but they talked up hey, he's going to bring this defensive attitude to the offensive side of the ball. They're going to tell him, you don't have to play linebacker to play like a linebacker, right? And he's going to be at the position where the team needs him, but he got there himself. And so I think but the other thing is, and I think Kevin Wilson said this at the end, this is you can't keep doing this. At some point, you're going to fall in a crack if you keep moving back and forth. So I do think this is probably it, and I would guess Cade Stover is their starting tight end against Notre Dame.
He said the same thing back in the Rose Bowl practices leading into that when they were starting to look at Cade Stover at tight end. They said the same thing. You can't keep moving him around. He has to be able to get a position and develop there, and he's been bouncing around so much. I think he's clearly a guy who has talent to help Ohio State, and I think that room is so full. The linebacker room right now is, I can't remember if it was Ryan Day or Jim Knowles today that described it as a logjam, but the tight end position is not a logjam. He is their best tight end for what they want from a tight end right now. I think you're right. I think he starts against Notre Dame. A lot more about this on the Buckeye Talk podcast. Find that wherever you find your podcasts, and get the text 614-350-3315. Today we were texting a ton of intel from these press conferences right as it happened, right to your phone from Buckeye Talk.